Manuskript is an open source software that is free, and for a writing software that seems to be fairly well known, it was really hard to find. So I'm still not completely sure if I did something wrong or if this is really just the case, but basically when you look for the software online, there is no own website with a name that you can go to and directly download it. Where I found it eventually was here on this sharing site, where basically you have the entire overview of the software and every time it got released again with improvements and so on. And this is basically where you can download it. It is available for Linux, Mac and Windows, and when you want to download it, in my case for Windows, basically what you do is you download the zip file and then you have to run the software on your own computer. There are some instructions available, but it isn't as easy as it should be. So basically what I did here is I downloaded this zip file, right? And then you end up with basically this file, and here what the instructions said was to run this software on your computer. The first thing that will happen is that your virus detector will give you an alert that it's an unknown source. So I ran it anyway and I didn't have any problems in that sense, but it does look a bit suspicious, so just be aware of that. If that is something that you're not comfortable with, this software is definitely not for you. But like I said, I didn't have any problems myself. Here you get this first starting page where you can choose what kind of project that you want to create. So in my case, I want to create a novel, and then here you can already put in how many chapters and so on you want. So this is pretty handy because this way you don't have to add chapters every time, right? And let's go with this for now. And then down here you can create your new project, or if you are returning, you can basically select a project that you created previously. And you can also, if you are working in the same project over and over, set this mark here so that it opens it automatically. So that's a bit easier, so that you don't every time have to go through the whole starting process. But overall, the installation process and the starting process for this software is definitely not optimal in my opinion. So then when it comes to setting up your project, this is your starting screen where you can give the project as usual its name. And then the next page is basically where you can write down your overall idea, your premise statement and a summary of what the idea is. And this page also can be used as a page for developing that idea. So as you can see here, basically we have as a situation, and then if I have a one sentence summary, I could put that in here, or I can go with one paragraph, one page and full. And basically it gives you options to apply a bit of a snowflake method, where basically you start out with just one situation and then you add to it and then you have different summaries, if that is something that you like. Or you can just do what I do here, which is basically go with one sentence summary, which is really just an overview for yourself to remember. Then what I'm doing with these reviews is I always use the same input material, a project that I'm working on right now, as a comparison between the different softwares, so that it's clear what features there are, what are missing. So basically to get a better sense of what this software looks like in action when you put in your own project and what might be missing for your own needs. So for the summary, like I said, I will put in basically a general overview of what the story is about. And then the next page are the characters. So here for the characters, on the side, you basically have the distinction between main, secondary and a minor character, and you can add as many as you need. This is pretty nice, especially if you have a large cast of characters. And basically what it looks like is you add your character. Here you can choose whether this character is minor, secondary or main. In my case, this is the protagonist. Here, because it's the protagonist, I'm also making this a point of view character. And to give it a bit more distinction, I'm giving it a color. So this point of view character is going to be red. And then you have some fields where you can put in your specific information. So what I did here is I'm putting in basically the information that I figured out during the Brandon Sanderson character video, and Distinction between motivation and goal, that's kind of nice. Conflict, I'm going to put in character flaw, limitations and stuff like that. And for the epiphany, I'm using it as a sort of character arc progress. And as you can see, there are a lot of note fields where you can add more character information. What you can't do is add any imagery, so that's a pity. So then, as you can see, you basically have your overview with the characters. And again, what I did is for the two main characters, I chose the point of view, and the others are that you could give the other characters also a point of view, but in my story, it's really just the protagonist who are viewpoint characters. Then for the next thing, you can add your plots. Here again, the same distinction between main, secondary and minor, and as well you can add as many plots as you have, which is really nice if you have a story with a lot of plot lines. So for this future storyline, I only have 2 plot lines. So I basically have a main plot and then a subplot for this point of view character, and then the story moves on to the second point of view character. So I don't need that many plot lines. They happen after each other, not all together mixed in with each other, right? Whereas for the present day storyline, I have a lot of character conflict and plot lines between characters, and for that this kind of software would be really useful to have like a complete overview of all the plot lines that you have and being able to make this distinction between categories. Here once again, to add it, you can just go like this, give it the importance category that you want. So this is the main location. And here you can add which characters are relevant in this plotline. So in this case, we have basically a few characters who are all relevant for this plotline. Description, result, and resolution steps. So for the resolution steps, what you can do is you can add here basically how the story plays out. I like to use this as a sort of plot events. So kind of starting with the opening scene, the opening mystery, moving on to the first hint, and then so on. So kind of using it like that. So that is what that would look like for me. And then, like I said, so let's add a secondary plot here this time. So this secondary plot is more of a character conflict plot that also happens simultaneously. And here the characters that are relevant are once again the protagonist and then basically the protagonist's family. Here, for this, I'm making it less complicated. So let's say 3 things. So if you have, like in my case, a character arc where you basically want to display how the character changes, you could do that here in the plotline in this manner. Then what this software has, what the other softwares that I looked at previously didn't necessarily have, is specific location features. So here you have this whole world tab, and what you can do is basically you can add it blankly, or you can go down here and have the fantasy world building elements put in. And I would suggest you do that either way if you have fantasy or not, because as you can see, it's basically a list of all features when it comes to world building that might be relevant and that you might want to consider. So it's definitely useful just as a sort of input. What I will use in this case for now is the important places. And here basically what you do is you select the category and then again you add a new item here. Here once again, not being able to put in imagery is really a pity, because as you can see you have a lot of room for description, but when it comes to location especially, being able to have some sort of visual input would be really necessary, especially for my way of working. So I feel it's nice to have like the input material in terms of the description and stuff if you have that, and if you're really just looking to write it down, right? But you would probably have some sort of inspiration stored somewhere, and it would be good if that could be done within the software, and that's not possible here. So the way that I would use this world building category here in this software is to really just list all the items and put in your information. And in that sense, it can function a bit as a wiki, where you have like all the stuff that you need stored according to categories, and you can use it when you do your writing. So for example, rules of the magic system and stuff like that. In that sense, it's definitely useful, it's just missing that visual aspect. Then for the outlining section, here you again have the overview of the plot lines that you already created, again listed according to main, secondary and minor, and you have all the resolution steps that you put in. So that's nice in the sense that you have it in an overview section here, and then what you have here basically are the chapters that you defined in the beginning. And when you go and open them here, basically you have the under category of scenes. So what I want to do here is to add more folders to this chapter overview, because I want to put in the structure, the hero's journey as well. This is a higher category, and then these 6 chapters are the viewpoint character 1 story that happened within the first hero's journey turning point. So what you can do here is you can here you can add chapters and scenes according to your needs, and what that could look like would be, for example, like this. So in my case, what I have here is basically, as you can see, this would be the hero's journey with the 8 viewpoint characters, and then beneath that you have these 6 chapters, which is the first viewpoint character, and then within a chapter you have the scenes. So you are able to create basically the kind of structure that you want and according to your own story needs. Then what you can do here in the outlining section is also you can choose for each of the folders, for example, or for the scenes, the labels. So in this case, would this be like a chapter, or is it research or stuff like that? You can go with the status, what stage of the writing process are you in, set the viewpoint character. So in this case, for example, I would have like the viewpoint character for the first one and then the viewpoint character for the second one, and here in the overview section I then would see who story I'm basically telling in which of the chapters. And the same is true here for the label and the status. You can go further down into your structure, and like I said, for example, you can go and give this scene here, let's call it a scene so it's obvious, and this second text document would be research. So you can use this overview section basically to organize your project and know where you're at with the writing process. This is more of a sort of tracking overview than it is story overview. Story overview would happen more in the editing. And what you can see here as well is how many words you've written. You have this goal according to what you set when you originally created the chapters. So that's basically what I would be using this section for. What I haven't found out is how to link those two things together. So here you have the plot overview, right, to the plot lines, and next to it you have the chapter overview, but I couldn't create links so that it would be clear that, for example, the secondary plot line would happen in chapter 1 to 3 or stuff like that. So in that sense, I'm not completely sure why the plot lines are visible here as well and how you integrate them into the chapter structure. As for the goal setting, you have the option here to basically select your chapters or your scenes, and then down here you can give it a manual goal as well. So let's say that for chapter 1 I want to have 1,000 words, and this way you can adapt it afterwards as well. Okay, so moving on to the editing section. Here basically what you start out with is your chapter overview once again. If you select the highest folder, what you get is this kind of overview. So now, as you can see, basically I have the overview of the 6 chapters that are within this folder structure, and here what I would use this overview for is as an overview of the plot beats and what happens in each of these chapters, to have a sort of summarized overview of what the story is. So you can select a card and then basically you can put in your information, and this is what it would look like for me. So the overview of what happens in each of the chapters more in detail, and here you can select what you want it to look like. Here what I like this card overview. I can make it a bit bigger so that I can see my entire text, and this is where I would go to give me the input of what I want to write in a specific chapter and then scene. Here by clicking on parent item you can go a layer further up. So back to the overall hero's journey overview in my case, and here you can do the exact same thing by basically giving it the summary of what happens in each of these points and use it in the same manner. The same is true if you go in further down. So now I'm on the level where I have the overview of what would be the scenes for chapter 1, and here I can basically use this overview as a scene cards, index card kind of tool where I can note down what exactly happens in which scene and then use that as the input for writing the scene. So I really like that feature of this editing section where you have this combination of having like a broader overview of the scene and also your plot beats, plot events, and then being able to use them as the starting point for when you do the detailed scene and the writing. So what you can do in order to do that basically is, for example, let's choose the first scene. This is the writing screen where you can basically add the writing, and when you click here on the side on splitting it, you can see that you have two windows. Both for now are open on the scene, but they act as their own independent windows, and when you go and select one of them as the overview page, basically what you can do is you have here your index card input, and on the side you have your writing window. And each of these windows can be split further and further, so you could go and basically also split this one, so you can also add your world input, or you can go and split it in this manner. So that is a really cool feature of this software, that you have these split screen views that basically help you organize all your input material in one view so that you can use it while doing the writing. As you can see here, when you look at the scenes, they are marked because earlier we set a label for them, right? So because I marked them as scenes and research, you can see this in this view as well. And the same is also true if you go and let's say this is a first draft, you can also give it statuses that are visible here. And because I want to distinguish between what are my scenes and what is my research, I can also go select this one here, which is the research, and give it its own custom icon. So let's give it something that looks more researchy. And this way here in the overview you would see directly what is what. Then down here you also have some features that allow you to see either the plots or also the characters as well. So for example, what this could look like. Here we have the overall structure, then we have the chapters, and then we have the viewpoint characters and where they are the viewpoint characters according to the label that I set earlier. You can make this larger so that it's easier to distinguish. And what I have right now are the plot lines and the characters both selected, but in my case let's turn off the plot lines so I just see where which character shows up in terms of viewpoint. And in that sense, what's a bit a pity is of course that you only see the viewpoint characters, so you only see when a character has a certain viewpoint. You can't mark when the characters all show up in which chapter, unless you would mark all of them as viewpoint and use the feature in that sense. So if you don't really care about knowing which character is the viewpoint character because that's clear for you, you could also use that feature to just basically mark when a character shows up and have this map here where you see it in one go. So before we move on to the writing, let's take a look at the design, the layout, and how customizable it is. So personally, I really don't like this wood background, for example, for the index cards, and there is some room to adapt it. So when you go up there in the editing settings, here under views and then text editor, index cards, let's start here. So as you can see, this wood thing is basically an image and you have the option to add your own images. I already added some previously, and basically what I did is I just added a black background so that I can use this one, and then as you can see, make it more of a clean canvas, or there is some room for you to add like character art or world inspiration art and have it just as the background to your index cards at the very least. Because we weren't able to add any imagery to the settings or stuff, at least you could have it in here and have some inspiration for your story. And you can also change the font here according to the fonts that you have stored on your own computer. So I do have some custom fonts that I downloaded some time ago, and these also show up in here, so that's nice. For this I really just want it very plain, very normal. Go with that. Misspelling is okay, and the rest for me really works. I really like this whole dark view, dark mode that it has going. That's really nice in terms of what I prefer. And then for the distraction free writing mode, what you do is you go and basically select your scene or wherever you want to do the writing, right? And then down here you can open it, and this is what it looks like. So let's add some actual writing in here. Here on the side you have some information. So for example, this will be my writing, and then to close it you exit this mode again. So yeah, you have some room for customization in terms of color, background images and stuff like that, and make it more fit to your own preferences. Also for the writing, you do have the option of importing a Word document into this software. Up here you have the import function, and then what it does is it takes the information that you gave it, basically the format and stuff from the original document, and import it in that manner. So for me, what this basically means is that I have like this Word document with some comments in it and a lot of text that is somewhat in chronological order but isn't really sorted into chapters or anything. So I really just have like this one root document now where I have all that text in here, and from this I could then go on and sort it into the chapters where I specifically want it. Now when it comes to the editing functions, there are some options but they are fairly limited, and I'm not a big fan of this tool at all when it comes to the editing. So here what you have is the spell check, the usual, and then here you have this format section, and this is basically the editing tools that I could find. So what you can do is you can mark the text in specific ways, you can give it headers, and you can add comment blocks, and those are basically your comment functions which you would use to add editing comments to yourself. So I did one of them, and as you can see they look like this, and they're very similar to the kind of comments that you would have in coding, but I personally really don't like this kind of comment when it comes to writing and editing. They are hard to spot, and they are basically just nested within the text, right? There are no options for having comments around the text or having like those pop-up comments or stuff like that, and it's really the only comment function that I could find. So in this software what I would probably do is work with text documents instead and create like similar to this research text document that I created, have like notes text documents where I put in all my relevant notes and work with that rather than with this comment function here. So for the exporting functions, what you have is here when you go and you compile it, here you can choose into what format you want to put it. You can put it into Word, into EPUB, and some of those other documents here. So putting it into Word to give you a sense of what that would look like. And you can choose if you want to have the folders and the chapters. And this is what I got. So basically I have my text according to my structure once again, and this is basically what it looks like. Let's go into chapter 2 to see. As you can see, it didn't take my comment in here, so these comments that we put in the Manuskript software really stay in there, and you wouldn't get them in Word. So those are basically ghost comments. When it comes to backups and saving your project, I would definitely recommend that you save your progress often when you use this software. I do not trust this software very much when it comes to not crashing on me or not losing my project. So I had two problems with this software when I tried it out in the last 2 weeks, and one of them was that I didn't move my project. There's like a saved folder, right, where you have like all the information stored automatically once you create a project, and that folder didn't really link up with the software when it started, so it wouldn't find it, and because of that it couldn't find my project anymore. I haven't found out what the problem was there, but it seemed to be confused as to where my project was. And the other problem that I had was mainly when working in this software, that sometimes it would basically have a problem with functioning properly. It would just freeze up, and then it would take a moment, and sometimes it crashed and I lost some information because I didn't save it before it crashed, right? So in that sense, I don't feel it's like the stablest option. I'm a bit surprised that it has these problems considering the iteration that I'm on. This seems to be a fairly far developed iteration of this software. So again, this comes back to the problem that I had originally when it came to downloading the software and how exactly you're meant to run this software. Maybe it's a Windows problem and you would have less problems if you had a Linux or Mac. But in my case, as you can see, during the use of the software, this secondary window is constantly open, which saves my progress. So the script is running, but it's running in the open. And when I close this, it closes the entire software. So the biggest problem that I had with this software was really that you have like this installation folder which has all the components to run the software, right? And here the command to run it. But I couldn't find out how to have the software installed so that I don't need this installation folder anymore. Basically, every time I want to run the software, I have to go with this command here and keep the installation folder in order for it to work. You can't take out this command function because otherwise it doesn't work properly with the rest of the installation software, right? So that's why it's really confusing and annoying in terms of how do you properly install this software, what are you supposed to do, why doesn't it work, not sure what I'm doing wrong here. So what I ended up doing as a workaround is basically I took the installation folder and created a new folder, Manuscript, put that in there. Also, the backup of my project is in there as well. So now I have one Manuscript folder on my computer, and when the software was running, I basically went and pinned it to my taskbar, and now every time when I want to run the software, basically I now have this starting command here pinned on my taskbar and it starts the software, and that is basically my workaround for having the same kind of starting page as you would with any other software. So in that sense, I don't really mind it that much because it's really kind of like the same thing as you normally would have. It just looks a bit different because there's this secondary window here, right? But the thing that bothers me with that is that I'm not sure if I can be completely sure with the saving process. Does it save my project properly? Is the data safe? And also because the software keeps freezing, I'm not really that convinced that it has a lot of running power. And those two things are really the main reasons why I wouldn't use this software right now. I don't know, maybe it's because I did something wrong, maybe you have some different experiences running it on different systems, or maybe this is just a version right now that has those bugs, and in a future iteration it will be corrected and then it will run properly. So I am definitely keeping an eye on this software. I like a lot of the features, especially the outlining features, the folder structure, and how you can go more and more detailed into having your overall story, your summary, then your plot beats, and then going down to the scene and the scene details, being able to work with different windows at the same time. So there's a lot of cool features in here that has potential, and it's really just this whole installation and the software freezing up that's a real bother for me. That's why when it comes to this software, I would recommend that you have a look at other free writing software, see if there's a better fit for you before you come back to this software. If you are interested in trying it out, maybe do that first, try it out, see if you have the same issues as I had, and then if that's the case, do the same thing as I do, which is basically maybe keep an eye on the software, see if it gets better, and then in the future try it out again when it has gotten better. Because as of right now I cannot really recommend this software, at least not for Windows. So yeah, this is my review. I would be interested in hearing your experience with Manuskript, if you have different ones, if you have some input as to what I'm doing wrong when it comes to the installation process. And if you are interested in further reviews for free writing software, you can go to my playlist here, which has other free writing software reviewed in the same manner as this one was, and maybe you will find something that is a better fit for you there.